Hey there, everyone. Kylie Elizabeth here, the virtuoso educator, and I'm here today with a special guest, Yasha Chapman, coming from California. And Yasha is the CEO, founder, and the principal consultant of Elementary Education Evolved. And so she's going to talk a little bit about her business and organization and her experience in education. And we're going to just have a free-flowing conversation today about, the world of education. So I'm going to bring her on. And just give me 1 second. All right. Hi, Yasha. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce a little bit about yourself, and we'll get right into our conversation.
Hi, Kylie. Thank you so much for having me on today. As you mentioned, my name is Yasha Chapman, and I am an educator with over 10 years of experience. My experience lies in being a classroom teacher, a tutor, curriculum writer, curriculum coordinator, and instructional coach. I've had the opportunity to teach in 10% of our country in all urban populations with primarily Black and Brown communities. And so now my work is rooted in my business, Elementary Education Evolved, where we're on a mission to decrease the academic achievement gap for K-5 minority students, as well as increase retention for beginning elementary school teachers and beginning instructional coaches. And we do that through effective training and instructional coaching programs. So I'm excited to talk about everything that we have to offer, my experience, and just have some good conversation with you, Kylie, today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I just love the world that you're in because that is my world, curriculum and instruction. We both have the same master's background as well as in administrative leadership. So these topics are really fun for me. And just seeing the data that you shared and the growth that you have helped the schools and the children develop while you were leading in those different areas. And I'll let you talk on that later. It was really refreshing to see. And so before we get into your business, I just want to kind of backtrack a little bit and let you explain a little bit about, where you're from and kind of your schooling background and what led you into this world of education.
Okay, so I'm originally from Savannah, Georgia. I am the youngest of 5 children, and both of my parents were educators. So my mom is a school social worker. She's retired. And my dad, he has passed away, but he was a retired pre-K advocate. And so it's funny because they both told me not to go into education. And I did it. So I got started. My very first grade that I taught was pre-K. Loved pre-K, but I wanted to experience the older students, and I fell in love with second grade. Second grade is my jam. Absolutely love everything about it. Curriculum, the students, how you get to play with them, just like where they are at that stage of development. So I went from being a classroom teacher. Like I said, I transitioned into a curriculum coordinator, which led into me becoming an instructional coach. I went back to school to get my master's from Liberty University. I really appreciated that experience just because I've never viewed education. I don't know if you are familiar with Liberty University, but it's a Christian-based college university. Okay. And so all of our work revolved around the Bible and examining Jesus as the teacher. And to me, that was extremely eye-opening because I never viewed education in that lens, but it made sense. What better educator to study than Jesus Christ? And so regardless of your religion or what you believe in, the work that he did still speaks volumes and still can be impactful in the work that we do in education today, just in all your mindset and how you approach education, how you approach working with children, how you approach your relationships with other people in general. And so that was a very, very enhancing, eye-opening experience. And I feel like that's what really helped me elevate and evolve into the leader that I am today.
Awesome. That's it. Yeah, I have not heard of Liberty University, so now I'll have to do a little bit of research. But yes, like you said, it doesn't matter about the religion. It's just, how you're applying it in your beliefs. And so for those that, do have that belief, that could potentially be a really good school for you to go into. So thank you for sharing your background and about your parents. And you made a really funny comment. I don't want to say it's funny because it's actually brought up a lot. And I deal with this when working with young students who are trying to figure out what career to go into. You said your parents said do not go into education. So we hear a lot about that, and
Yes.
the influences on the world of education, and in parents of any family will say, hey, yes, this is going to be a viable career choice for you, or no, you shouldn't, and go the other direction. And I think a lot of children really do listen to what their parents say, but I think you got a good example of what a positive education looks like in that field. And your parents were not outsiders saying, don't go into education because of maybe the money, right? Your parents may have said it like, don't go into it, because they know it's a lot. It's taxing, and it can be a lot into you.
Right.
Before we continue, why do you think they were telling you not to go into education, and maybe how did you convince them otherwise?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I know my mom was thinking like it's a taxing job. You might not really like it, and I don't think they
Mm-hmm.
really thought I liked children that much because I'm the youngest of five, and so
Yeah.
I have nieces and nephews, and I was around children a lot, but I never really expressed like a liking for them at growing up at that time. And then and my
Yeah.
dad was just thinking of finances, like it doesn't pay a lot. What led me to changing my mind was when I did go to undergrad, I was originally a pre-chemistry, a pre-pharmacy major. And so that's
Okay.
what I was going for, pharmacy. And to be honest, Kylie, I was failing everything. I was like, I've never failed these subjects before. I've been an honor roll student since kindergarten. So how do I get all the
Mm.
way to college and now I'm failing?
Right.
A little backstory, I had a lot of foreign teachers, but anyway, and so I feel like there was like a language barrier in the block. But I ended up taking some personality tests, and classroom teacher kept popping up in like the top 5 of all of these personality tests that I did. And so
Mm-hmm.
I went to a local elementary school in Valdosta, Georgia, and I did some shadowing. I was able to shadow a teacher and spend some time in her 3rd grade class. And I met a student, and she asked me, I was helping her with her work, and she asked if I could be her mom. And when I
No.
asked her, why would she want me to be her mom? And she says, because you're helping me with my work.
Mm.
And it was at that exact moment where the light bulb went off. And I was like, I will do this every day for the rest of my life to
Mm-hmm.
help children that look like you, that look like me, because just her vulnerability and the emotion in her expressing her desire for support, her desire for help, and her
Yes.
ability to be able to connect with me so easily. And I believe it's because I looked like her. That's
Yes.
what fueled my passion. And I was like, forget the money, forget whatever everyone else's opinion is. I'm motivated intrinsically by this.
Right.
This is my purpose, and this is what I feel like I can contribute to.
Wow, that's beautiful. And that's been like the one of the main topics that I speak on is relating to the students and really listening to what they're saying to you. And that key moment of when that student said, I want you to be my mom. Like, I've heard that before in my past, working with young children, and a lot of parents may not even realize that their children might not be feeling that they're being loved at home, or we do know that families have struggles and difficulties, and not students have the best home life, and education is where they're spending most of their time, especially if they are in a public or even a private school. But if they're in school in person, they're spending 6, 7, 8 hours a day with a teacher. And especially an elementary teacher, you have that person all day long, and those kids really look up to you, and so really build a bond with you. And
Yeah.
regardless how you look at them as the student will always perceive you in a certain way, because of how you are with them. And so that speaks volume to your character, that child picked up, that you love them, you're nurturing, you actually care for them and for their education, which is extremely important, extremely important. And so I was just literally talking about that in my last episode with another person, and that we just have to listen. So you got the light from the source itself, that student, that education, that to be an educator, and that's that calling. And I think a lot of us, we aren't happy in the work that we do because it's not organic. It's kind of forced upon when we're doing certain things. And, that experience is organic. And when we have empathy for others, and when we're able to really help people, and that's something that we need for ourselves to help others, that this world is that place for us to be in. So I'm glad that she said that to you, because now, fast forward, and you're here with your own business. You are consulting. So tell us a little bit what you're doing with your Elementary Evolved.
So we partner with schools, different educational organizations and institutions where we work with beginning teachers. So if you're at a university or college and you have teachers that's in an undergraduate program that's getting ready to go into that field, I come in and I provide trainings, culturally relevant and culturally responsive trainings for them, as well as general educator topics. Again, any training topic can be customized based off of what their need or their goal is. But I also go into elementary schools and provide, again, trainings on various topics, coaching programs. I have not launched it at this time, but in the next coming months, I will be offering direct support and resources to teachers who want to take their professional development into their own hands. And so that's coming up soon, as well as what I'll be offering coaching membership programs online, doing it virtually. And so that's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. We provide methods and strategies that have been proven through research, as well as through my own personal experience, to close academic gaps for minority students. So all of the training, all of the coaching is geared towards that one goal, in addition to retaining teachers. Because the philosophy is rooted in the belief that if teachers experience classroom success, they're more likely to remain in the classroom when they've had successes. And so my job is to help them experience successes, they experience wins, so that they are more likely and feel more confident and equipped to remain in the classroom.
Wow. Yeah. And yes, the experiencing successes for sure. And a lot of the kids, so you work primarily with the little. So for me, I worked with the high school students, and in that engagement is completely necessary, and to start it at a very early age, so those kids can keep those skills with them of the importance of their education, but also wanting to be there and to be in the room. And one of my first interviews that I posted was with one of my former students who just was not engaged in the room, was a hall walker, and just didn't want to be there, right, for various reasons. And so, I'm kind of curious, when you mentioned the cultural responsiveness supports, what are a couple examples of how you aid schools in that professional development, or teachers?
So a big part of that is providing training on enhancing cultural competency. And so just like we want our teachers to be strong with their pedagogy and to know their content, we also want them to be competent and understand the differences of the cultures of the different demographics of the students that they have within their classrooms. So just being aware of what is acceptable and not acceptable in one community as opposed to another. A small minor example could be a large thing in the Black community is personal space. We are really big on having our personal space. That's a cultural norm. And I've experienced and witnessed in educational settings where our other counterparts may not necessarily understand that cultural norm, and that space gets invaded, and then it creates an issue, not only for those, but especially when it comes to the teacher and the student relationship. And so just understanding things like space proximity, tone of voice, strategies as to how you look at a student. Are you looking at them through the lens of what media has fed you? Are you looking at them with a lens of bias, and so we peel back all of those layers as to what could be hindering us from really making those intentional connections with our students. So that's just some of the trainings that we do and some of the ways that we support beginning teachers and coaches in this work.
Absolutely. And it's very important work because, we're in, I mentioned this before, like just a really, I don't want to call it a weird state in education. I think it's just more in our face now because of technology and people are more cognizant of the world that we live in. And it's important. I think it's important for all people to understand each other and the environments in which they live and just how their home lives are. Like just every culture is different. And I think, you brought up a good one with the proximity, right? A lot of people wouldn't even think of that. And I think one for me that I heard a lot of when I was teaching, and I was involved in elementary, middle school at some point too in my career, but people, especially with Black or African American students, they're so loud and they just talk loud and all the things. And I'm just like, but do you know their culture? Like, we're a loud group of people. And if you go to their house, like it's loud. Like, and so even for me and somebody who kind of thrives in loud noises, and when it's quiet, I'm like, oh, it's too quiet. You know what I mean? So it's like, they're not being loud and disrespectful. It's like, that's just their culture and how they talk and what they're used to. And so kind of those small key details can be very important to understanding how to work with your students or even to approach conversations with them. If you feel that it's a behavioral issue when it's really not, it's just who they are naturally as a person.
Who they are, and the gap is that there hasn't been any training or research or intention behind trying to understand them past what, and I keep going back to media because that's what we are ingesting the most these days.
Yes.
They paint a stereotype, they paint a picture, and we have to do our best to combat that image because everything that we're shown is not true. We're finding that out and we're learning more and more every day, the lies that we've been fed, the propaganda. And so we have to understand that education has been thrown up in that mix as well. And to your point, so we have to prepare our students for interconnected, a global partnership. We have to understand each other beyond the classroom because we all live in this planet. So we have to teach from that lens. We have to incorporate text and literature and even going beyond literature, because I think I hear a lot of inclusive curriculum, make sure the curriculum is reflective of multicultural literature. Don't stop at literature. Let's go to math as well. Introduce multicultural leaders in our mathematics world. Examine the contributions that other cultures have made to make math more relevant and more meaningful to different demographics of those students. And so it goes beyond literature. We can do it in math. We can do it in science. We can do it in social studies. There's so much rich history within our world, our Earth's history, and that should be explored and examined in education.
Absolutely, yes, and key. That's key. And so when people ask, like, what are the, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but when people ask, what are the issues with the current curriculum and what are the issues, if we were talking critical race theory, all of those things, right? It's more of like, are we giving a one size fit all information for all people? Because that's not what it is. When you provide one resource or one set of resources from a certain group of people, that's really only in capturing part of a story and part of history, part of, a piece of the puzzle. It's not giving you the full puzzle. Like, what does the full picture look like at the end of the day? And I kind of referred to, when we are shunned away from having certain resources to look back on, to learn points of views, to get the full context of a story, then we're not really fully understanding ourselves as people, and regardless of what demographic or culture or ethnicity we're coming from, because we're only getting a small piece of it. And so it's really important, like you said, to embed all of these different things into the curriculum, into the resources that are being shared, because at the end of the day, any school you walk into, you're going to have a representation of all cultures. It's not going to be just one subculture of people. And so it's important for us as humans to connect with each other. It's just to know more about each other. And I think I mentioned this too, everything's not sunshine and rainbows, like in this world that we live in. And so it's
That's not
important.
the world. So why
Yeah.
paint that picture? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Exactly.
important for our kids to know. It's important for our kids to know, like how to be able to identify certain things and prepare for a real world, because you can't paint a picture that things are perfect. And then when they become adults, like, surprise, like it's not. So, so I think it's important.
Exactly. Then they don't have the necessary skills that they need to navigate relationships or handle conflict. And then they're missing out on all those various perspectives to enhance the critical thinking and all of the major points that our standards want our students to be able to do by the time they graduate and leave our educational system. So when we are doing that from one perspective, we are limiting ourselves. We're doing a disservice and totally going against the grain of what the standards are put in place to do.
Right. Yep. And that makes sense. And you kind of got to think back, like,
whether we agree or disagree.
Right. Whether we disagree, right, or agree. And that's the key thing, because we're not going to agree on everything, which is completely fine, but it's still important to understand, again, a full story. So like thinking on that topic, like, obviously this is a big push right now to really get these efforts into schools. And for me, I kind of get tired of seeing the conversation over and over again. I think we know as people what direction we need to go into to better certain things for our educational system. It's just more of like, are we going to take action and actually do it? Or is there always going to be these hurdles that kind of stop us from progressing in a positive way in our world of education? And then you've got to think of the people who become teachers, right? And who are now as adults needing the resources such that you provide, which is great, right? Because you're in business because of it, right? But still on the flip side, it's like you're in business because people still lack to understand the importance of these topics. And we're in 2024, Happy New Year. And it's crazy to think on that. And so we had, when we were talking before our recording, we mentioned how, obviously it's not just for the benefit of the kids, but it's for the benefit of the adults, and kind of getting over those hurdles of working with educators themselves and the adults in the room. So kind of off of your experience with your consulting business and the resources you're providing, where are some areas that you've found some struggles with, or, that were kind of surprising that we're still dealing with certain types of conversations or topics as you're trying to approach with this method of coaching?
I'm really astonished at the basics, like the foundation, how many educators still struggle with lesson planning. Simple things as engaging your students at the beginning of the lesson, understanding how to differentiate. That's a big one, a big one.
Yes.
What I constantly hear educators state is how taxing and time consuming it is to gather all the resources in order to implement differentiation. But I want to urge them and urge every educator out there, once you get a system going, it is no longer the first time. Yes, it's going to take some time because you probably have 23, 24, 25 kids on your roster. You're looking at their data. You're trying to figure out where everybody is. You're grouping them based off a skill or ability or however you want to group them. And then you have to find those resources to align with whatever skills they need. And then you have to map it out, right?
Right.
That takes time. But once you do it, and it depends on how far out you want to map it, because these things can be mapped. You have curriculum maps and things for that nature. You can do your own personal one. You don't have to have a district curriculum map or a school curriculum map. Teachers, you can make your own to keep yourself on pace with what you need to do for your students. Nobody knows your students better than you.
Exactly.
Nobody knows your students better than you, and with the exception of their parents. And so you just have to be intentional about how you plan your time. Once you get that system together, that one time, I guarantee every time after that, it will just flow. You'll already know what they need. You'll see how your students are progressing. Eventually, you'll pick it up throughout the week. So you're no longer staying after school or coming in earlier. You're taking advantage of your prep time. We're not talking to our coworkers because we're not there to talk. I'm here to work. That was my mindset as a teacher. I'm here to get my kids to move up grade levels. I always think was I get out of my bed to close gaps.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah.
That has been my philosophy. That continues to be my philosophy within my business. So each and every day I get out of my bed, I'm getting out of my bed to close a gap. So we have to be intentional and just narrow focus vision on where we're going and the work that is required. Yes, it is work.
Yes, it is.
But it will pay off. It will pay off.
It definitely will.
But that's the biggest area I see differentiation. Small group instruction, for whatever reason, that's like a big like disagreement I'm seeing online, like in Facebook groups, on LinkedIn, like teachers not understanding the impact or the effectiveness of small group instruction, which kind of concerns me a bit, because how do you feel this one size fits all approach is meeting every child at their level if you're not doing small group instruction? And there's so much research to back up the effectiveness of it. If we really want to get, technical, speaking on Black and brown students, research shows that these cultures learn better and perform better in groups, in smaller groups. And so like we have this research and we're choosing to ignore it just because we want to satisfy our emotions, because that's really what it
Absolutely.
is. Our emotions say we don't feel like it. We're just lazy. We know what our kids need, but we don't want to put in the work to do it. You can't have it both ways. You can't complain about the lack of progress, but then not put in the work that it takes to get it done. And
absolutely.
So those are the issues that I see a lot. It's really, and all of that is really rooted in the educator's mindset.
Absolutely. And I completely agree. I think, there's a lot to be said on the level of responsibilities that are put on educators. We could talk about the money for days, like all of those things, right? But at the baseline and at the end of the day, you are an educator in front of children, middle schoolers, teenagers, high school, whatever age group you're in front, or even if you're in higher education, you are in front of children intentionally because that's what you choose to do. And I laugh because it's like when people, if I say these things and people are like, oh, you're kind of cold-hearted about it. I'm like, no, at the end of the day, we had chose to be an educator. We have to set a high bar for ourselves to have high levels of performance for our students. We have to hold ourselves accountable to hold them accountable. And that means being prepared, offering the different differentiation in education, the small groups, all of those little things. Like, yes, it's going to take us more time. Yes, it's going to take more. And we know the state of our classrooms. Like on average, class sizes are 27 to 30 students across the US. And that's, it just is what it is. And so you got to do what's best for your classroom, of course, but you also have to be able to manage yourselves and your skills on classroom management. Because I do think a lot of teachers who decide not to do small group because it is more work and it's and they might not be cut out for that. But I think that is an opportunity for us as educators to seek advice from our peers. I think that's something that is lacking. And I noticed that even working at a high school level, like people just want to do their own thing and not, seek advice or support where it's needed, because then you feel, less of an educator because you can't do it by yourself. When at the end of the day, and I say this all the time, it takes a village to raise these children. So we need to be able to support ourselves and work with people and really be able to get these strategies in together. But again, at the same time, take as high levels of importance for your job. It is your job to educate these kids, because I do think, like you said, your goal every day is to close those gaps. That is a huge goal of mine too. And we do that both through the cultural lens, and for me, more on that relationship building side. And so it's really important. And so you shared on your website that one of your statistics was that you created and led a K-5 strategic plan that focused on literacy, resulting in increased teacher competency by 55%. So
Yes.
can you kind of give us a little like snapshot of like what did you do to get that result? Because that's very impressive. And I've been waiting to ask this question to you.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that school year was right after the pandemic year, 2021, and our entire kindergarten was like composed of 75 students. And at the time, this was in April, and school got out in June. And so in April, we had this emergency data meeting. It's like, okay, our kindergartners are not reading. 6% out of 6% of kindergarten were proficient. And so the plan was, I split up the schedule. We got approval from the district to put a halt on curriculum to an extent. And so I called them like A and B days. And so A days, we strictly focused on skills, whether that be letter sound recognition, blends, writing, if they needed help with fluency, if they needed help with comprehension. And it was an all hands on deck situation. So we pulled aides from different grade levels. We we pulled the computer teacher. Everybody had a role, and everybody had a small group. Our small groups were no more than 5 students, and each group was built off of their personal goals and what they needed to work with. And so, of course, I would create resources for all of those students, all of those groups. And so on our A days, we focused on skills. On our B days, we still focused on the curriculum. And so just by going pretty much ping ponging back and forth, we saw a dramatic increase. We did that for 6 weeks, and our kindergartners went from 6% to 72% proficiency and being able to read at the middle or close to the end of kindergarten level. So it was just amazing in itself. And teacher competency increased just by having more data meetings, more meetings focused on the content in itself. And so that data came from like surveys, from asking teachers, how much did you know before, how much do you know after, pretty much evaluate the effectiveness of coaching and things of that nature. And 55% of teachers that I worked with within that strategic plan felt like their competency had improved based off of just the strategies and the methods, as well as the resources that we use to push our students.
Nice. That's a great plan, and I think I love that you shared that that data, because people, schools that do struggle, I find, do not use data as efficiently and effectively as they can. But again, when we're thinking on, we talk a lot on standardized testing through the U.S. and closing those gaps. Are you really closing gaps through the testing, like through the standards of testing? And I think you took that approach of really backing up to the foundations, right? You got to really focus in on those certain skills for these students, because if they're not knowing these foundational skills, they're not going to be able to master the next level of competency, comprehension, reading fluency, like all the things that go one on top of the other. So by you being able to do that with a kindergarten age students, I'm sure this is going to now track on for them as they go through middle school, high school, because they really had some foundational gaps closed, which is important. And I in the small charter that I worked with, that was the main thing post COVID. And I even recognize that with my own daughter. Like my daughter, she was in a preschool that really did a lot with reading and literacy. And she was actually ahead of her peers in kindergarten and first grade. And then the pandemic hit, right? And, I do as much as I can as a teacher who was teaching at the time and, having my kids at home, I did what I could. And then we shifted and moved. And, I then recognized that her reading, we got behind and, just wasn't as effective. And with the group of students, probably about 50 students I was working with between K and 8th grade, I really saw the impact of COVID and that gap that those students received from not being in school daily or getting what they needed at home because of various reasons, right? But that foundational, those skills and literacy is key to everything. And I know so I'm speaking to the viewers. It's important for our children to read. You start them as young as they can, if they can talk, they can read. And even if they can't talk, if you have a student that is not verbal, nonverbal, they can still read and they can hear and understand, comprehend. So really having foundational skills is important. 30 minutes a day reading, at least, even for us as adults, it's important for us to read text and not even through our phone, social media, like pick up a book and read. It keeps your mind like fluid and it keeps those skills like really good and kind of up to date for us as we're working through all the other things in life. And so
kindergarten. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think in kindergarten, it also makes sense, at least at that time, and what I was able to see, that we took away science and social studies. We kept math, but just the ability for them to focus on skills, necessary skills, as well as the math skills. So we did the same thing with math, counting. Identifying and being able to recognize numbers, ability to write numbers, the ability to write their names. Like we got analytical, like we started from scratch. Who can write their name? How many out of 75 can write their name? That's a group. How many out of 75 can identify all 26 letters of the alphabet? That's a group. How many can, and so that's literally how we broke down the data and was able to close those gaps. So I challenge anyone. I feel like that's the best thing to do because we can't get them to read if they don't, like we just stated, if they don't have those exact and specific basic skills that they need. Otherwise, we just do what everybody's been doing and passing it along. And even speaking to the pandemic, we saw a big decrease in handwriting ability and just being able to read it. And so we did a big push to pencil to paper push. And so iPads were only for, iReady. And if they earned a treat. But outside of that, we had to see the pencil to the paper, which I think is something that's also missing in today's classrooms.
Yeah, definitely. And that's so funny that you mentioned that, because my daughter, when she's at home writing, and she's in 5th grade. And so when she's writing for a long time, she's like, oh, my hand hurts, I can't do it. I was like, no, we're going to keep writing, because we're losing. And as a group of people, we, and because of the advancement in technology, we're losing our tactile, our kinesthetic functioning, muscle movement, fine motor skills. And so if you are a person that is giving, a preschooler, your 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old tablets and phones as their learning tool, but not giving them a pencil and paper, showing them how to hold a pencil correctly. Even the apps that are like, oh, let's teach your kids how to draw or how to write, but using your finger, like that's not proper, writing skills. They're never going to learn that muscle movement. And so then when we're going to be, our thumbs are forming differently as humans because of technology. So it's really important to get those fine motor skills down for our young kids. And then, of course, technology should be a tool to use in education. It should not be the only thing that they have access to be educated through. And so I love that you did that. Okay. So my next question that I was going to ask you is, so through your services that you have, and I'm looking online, so just so everybody knows, she is on social media under Elementary Education Evolved on Instagram and Facebook. Do you have anything else outside of those two?
I have a LinkedIn and TikTok.
Okay, LinkedIn and TikTok. I haven't gotten TikTok yet, though. That's like the one thing I haven't done. Okay, LinkedIn and TikTok. So she shares a lot of information on closing gaps and the services that you provide. Is there anything else that you would like the viewers that are watching today to know about your business, or something important that you feel in the world of education?
Only thing important to know about my business is you have help. I want every educator to know, especially beginning educators and beginning instructional coaches, you are not alone. Help is here, and not just help that's inexperienced. I've taught in classrooms during COVID and post COVID. Although I was in my instructional coach role, there were times where teachers would be out and I have to go in and step in. And so I've been in the trenches with you. I know what it's like. I know how these children are behaving. Everybody's like, these kids are different. You have support that relates to you, that understands you, and not only understands you, but has done the work and has gotten the results that you seek to gain. And so just know that I'm here. Elementary Education Evolved is here to truly help you and your students evolve your practices, evolve your methods and strategies, and evolve, most importantly, your mindsets. And that's really
Nice.
all I have. I would say, out just for the world of education, just know that the work that you do matters.
Yes.
The work that you do is impactful. You showing up means the world to your students, whether they show it or not. You not being there matters to your students, whether they
Absolutely.
show it or not. And so just know that you are the expert of your classroom. The work that you do is important, and you got the biggest cheerleader right here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yasha. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing your business with us. And yes, teachers, we talked about this earlier too. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. If you need help and support in your classroom, reach out to your peers, reach out to your administrative team. If you are a homeschooling parent, I'm sure Yasha could support you as well. There's resources everywhere on if you have those littles, those K-5 littles, to be sure to connect and check out her resources online. So again, thank you, Yasha, so much. Everybody, I'm Kylie Elizabeth, the Virtuoso Educator, and thank you for joining me on today's discussion. And be sure to check out all of our sites, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you.